Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in once again to another episode of Ralston Speaks, brought to you by the Unific Brotherhood. We have so much planned for the future of our people that we are going to get right into this next video. Now, before we start a history of our problems in this country, we have to make sure that we are all on the same page. Now, as a combat Marine, there were some things that were drilled into my head that I still remember to this very day. And I'm going to impart a little bit of my knowledge to you so that we know that we are all on the same page. We have to know, first of all, why we fight and who we're fighting. One of the things that was drummed into my head as a combat Marine was a man or woman who was not capable of being as cold and brutal as his or her enemy has already prepared for his or her demise. Now in the Marine Corps, we all said his, he, his, because we are all men. So, but I'm going to make sure that if I say he, it by mistake, that is referring to brothers and sisters, because we are all in this together. We have to protect each other. Now, another one. Now, what I say, why I'm saying that is, our enemy. Now, we are not. We are the most forgiving people on the planet. That has been proven. We are thick-skinned. We are slow to anger, generally. But once driven to anger, and it's been years, over 300 years of this relentless torture that we face on a daily basis, the neighborhoods we're forced to live in and things like that, has made us a little bit volatile in these past few years. And if you can't understand that, then you might be a Trumper. But these are the things that we have to, first of all, understand our nature as a people. And we have to understand who we're fighting against and why we're fighting. Now, the reason why I say that is there have been insidious ways that we have been victimized, especially in the recent past. Do you know that many of the encounters that our young men and women have faced with the police, Karens and Kens that come into our yard and call the police on us for having a barbecuing while black, DWB, driving while black, those incidences are started knowing that our patience is running out. We are goaded and forced almost to display anger, and that anger, it makes everything else that in their eyes justified. If someone comes in your yard and says, you people, they know, they're very intelligent, they know good and well that would bring us to very quick anger. They know, you people, this, that. They know that it's going to incite a riot. They do it on purpose to make sure that it does. A racist police officer wants you dead. They want you dead, and the more they want you dead, the slightest, the smaller will be the provocation to do so. So, Young brothers and sisters, do not travel alone, first of all. Always travel in pairs or groups. Now, it's not a sign of weakness to say yes, sir, no, sir to an officer. Why? Because if you say, yes, sir, officer, no, sir, officer, you could have the exact same look that I have on my face. That will never stand up in court. But that yes, sir, no, sir, officer is a damning display to a judge and a jury of police brutality. Hopefully it won't get any further than that, but yes, sir, no, sir, hands intended to your friend and partners recording the whole incident. If you have a drive cam, when you get pulled over, turn that drive cam to face you. That brings me to another saying that was drummed into my ears as a combat Marine. 7 P's. The 7 P's are prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. Before you get in that car, you have a SD card in that drive cam? Is your phone fully charged? Is the friend ready to film if something happens? Heaven forbid, if you're smoking marijuana, just make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's, because they're coming for you, my brothers and sisters. Let there be no doubt of that, because they lost a major battle in Hitler, Trump getting defeated. They will come at us with everything they can think of, and they can think of a lot. Prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. Think, plan your day. If you have to run to the store, do it. Hopefully in the daylight, so you have the more witnesses you have, the better. Now, the first thing I mentioned, a man or woman who is not capable of being as cold and brutal as his or her enemy has prepared his own demise. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to change our core values and that we are going to start two wrongs never make a right. I'm not saying that we are going to start behaving in any way like our enemies, but to prepare for their deviousness, you have to think of what they are capable of. That brings us to the next one. Never bring a knife to a gunfight. We've all heard that one. Never bring a knife to a gunfight. A prime example of that, you remember Shaka Zulu, the most formidable war chief the world has ever seen. At one point in time, him and his assegai and shield-wielding warriors controlled almost a third of the African continent. Shaka Zulu was a brilliant general. But he faced the British with short-handled assegais and shields, and they had muskets, 40 caliber balls in them. Geronimo of the Apache, Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, White Cloud of the Sioux, the Cheyenne. Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse wiped out General Custer and the 7th Cavalry. They fought as a cohesive unit, but they brought bows and arrows to a gunfight. Right now, I'm licensed to carry in the state of South Carolina and all the states of our union that have concealed carry laws. I'm not saying that you all should get guns, but I do believe that if it's my duty as an African American male, not only to protect my family, but my African American neighbors, if anything were to happen to them. We of the Unific Brotherhood all have the same feeling. We will protect each other and you as well. We do not condone violence. We condone security amongst our peoples and our families and our culture. So let's go back. Let's start with a little history lesson. We all know the progress that we have made in the last over 300 years. Slavery, I've said this before, there was never any intention of slavery ever ending. When the first slaves were drug over here in chains and shackles, there was no end game in sight. Why? Because we were not considered human. That would be, ladies and gentlemen, if we've domesticated the horse and the dog. We've given the dogs more rights than we had back then, but we've domesticated the horse, the dog, the cat. There is no end game in sight whether we are going to give dogs and cats their freedom, because we don't see them as equals to us. They are dumb animals. We have no intention of ever saying, go on, be free. Here's a plot of land. Go breed, have your puppies, do as you will. You're free now. Why? Because we don't see them as, they are here, we are here. We have no, it doesn't even occur to us that they have intelligence sometimes. We see a dog do great tricks, we go, oh my God, it's amazing. Why is it amazing? Because he's a dog, he's not supposed to be that way. That's why we say it's amazing. There was no end game in the end of slavery because we were not considered, first of all, human. Second of all, that we had an intelligent level even remotely equal to our enslavers. When they found out that, whoa, these people are displaying, okay, so what happened? The penalty for teaching a slave to read, death. Catch a slave reading, death. You can't learn how to read, write. You couldn't gather in more. They were starting to realize that, okay, these animals are a little bit rebellious, so we're going to put them in their place. Not, they're getting angry. Have we done something wrong? Maybe we should look at that. No, we are going to put them in their place where we think they belong. So there was no end game in slavery ever. The Emancipation Proclamation was brought on by, now, not all Caucasians feel the same, just like not all African Americans feel the same. Some of us are feel that to turn the other cheek, and we'll turn the other cheek, and we'll have our place, and we'll go to a better place and be rewarded. That's fine too. However, when you live as some of us have lived, strength, first of all, violence is the only thing our enemies understand. And my motto is to send them your very best. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Unific Brotherhood. So let's get back to what I was saying. So As a matter of fact, if we're going to go back in history, let's go all the way back in history. Indigenous people. An indigenous person is a person who, um, we're not going to go far to the creation of man, Zinjanthropus, Lucy, and where they were originated. But let's just say, let's just go to already established cultures. The Aborigines in Australia, the Maori in New Zealand, the Hawaiians in Polynesia, Micronesia, Polynesia, the Native Americans on the continent of North America, Africans, uh, whatever tribe they may be, Zulu, uh, uh, Maasai on the continent of Africa. These were indigenous people. They lived in harmony with their environment. Living in harmony with your environment meant that you killed what you needed to survive, unless, of course, it was on the plains of North America, winter. You gathered enough to last you through the winter. If you were to store something else, it would be during times that you knew there would be a drought. There'd be no rains. There would be cold winter. Now, these Aborigines lived in harmony with their environment. What does that mean? That means that if they were to pass, if the whole village, if their whole culture, for that matter, was wiped out, ceased to exist, and another culture came along, let's say 200-300 years later, depending on, now, some of the cultures built their dwellings, not their dwellings. None of them ever built their dwellings out of anything that I'm about to mention, but some of them built monuments. Monuments in the case of the Egyptians, the Asians, the Great Wall of China, things like that. They built, but the Aborigine, the indigenous peoples that I'm referring to, if they were to be wiped out and they passed, their dwellings, the items that they used to clothe themselves, whether it be animal skins on the plains in Africa, tapa cloth in Hawaii, it would biodegrade, rot away. The only thing that the people, if they were to stumble on a pottery shard, an arrowhead, a jawbone, a tooth, that would be the only way that we, me, myself, or anyone as an archaeologist, knew that those people were even there. We would be walking along a riverbed. We'd look down and say, look at that. It's an arrowhead. Start digging. There's a whole village under here. But we would have to piece it together, because there would be a shard of pottery this large, an arrowhead this big, a tooth that big, maybe a leg bone that for some reason hadn't biodegraded for 300 years under the ground. Now, these Aborigines, these indigenous people, these Native Americans, these Africans, these Hawaiians, lived for sometimes millennia in harmony with their environments. Now, then came another race that I would say that they had to behave this way because they lived in a harsher environment, but you can't get any harsher than the Eskimo in Greenland. The Eskimos had darkness for 6 months. Even in the summertime, there was relatively no thaw. They were never warm like we are warm. Ever. That's harsh. So that excuse where these people that I'm about to mention came from a harsher environment where they had to take what other people had and claim it as their own. Now, don't get me wrong, the Native Americans took slaves. They took slaves from other tribes, incorporated them into their own villages, married them. uh, indoctrinated into their countries, sometimes made them warriors, chieftains. Now, the Hawaiians took slaves. They weren't given the rights of a free person, but these slaves were married, were part of the tribe. Africans, of course, we all know they had slaves, vast amount of slaves, but the Caucasian race brought all of this to another level. A level that had been unprecedented. Their inventions of mass destruction caught these indigenous people by surprise. Their ships, not to mention their weapons, their ships, their modes of transportation, the wheel, the engine, their ingenuity was astounding, which started their superiority complex, that manifest destiny that we are superior through greater firepower, which is true, but we are superior for our mind. Therefore, since religion was very strong back then, therefore we are chosen by God. This is our place in society. Everybody else is here because look at what we've created. Look what we can do. Look what we have accomplished over these lesser beings. That started, basically, you could say that created a monster. Now, we won't get into the biological, the genealogical aspect of all this. We all know that blonde hair and blue eyes is recessive. Melanated skin and brown eyes is dominant. You can't breed a dominant from a recessive gene. So there are many theories on how, and one of them, of course, is biblical, of how this race was created. We all know the Bible says they were cast out and made to starve and wander naked, and they were formed, the evil aspect. So, be that as it may, however, they were created. First of all, they are becoming the minority. A pure white Aryan is soon to be hard to find. But anyway, so their inventions, their structures, their raping of land, the massacre of the buffalo. We all, my brothers and sisters, have heard of the sandalwood tree? The sandalwood tree is an aromatic tree grown only in Hawaii. The wood is more aromatic than cedar. Virtually wiped out. The plains buffalo. Did you know that the buffalo herds were called by all the tribes the Great Herd? The Great Herd, it took a day to ride around the herd, 24 hours to ride around this herd on horseback. It took a day. They fed, lived, sustained their culture from the buffalo. The buffalo were nearly wiped out in less than 30 years. Just for their fur. No bones, no meat. Maybe a tongue was roasted here and there, or some liver. But the rest of the carcass laid waste to rot in the sun. Gold. The best way to pan, the most environmentally friendly way to pan for gold is to take a pan, scoop it in the river, shake it out, look at the nugget. Look for the nugget. Then it gets worse from there. You can mine it, digging shafts into the earth, dynamite to compromise the structural integrity of a whole mountain, to the worst, the sluicing system where you just take a hose and you erode a whole mountainside to find a chunk, leaving waste in your path. Devastation and pollution. We can't drink the water anymore anywhere. But to leave behind destruction in your path where nothing can live and you move on to the next resource for you to exploit. Ladies and gentlemen, do we have any idea what the medical community calls something that feeds off a host, leaving destruction in its path, and when the host is dead, moving on to the next one and spreading yourself around to reproduce yourself? I believe that's called a virus. So this virus that was launched on the world can't sustain itself on its own. It has to have nourishment, sustenance, protein, water from a source outside of itself. It can't live on its own. So combine that with superior intelligence, and you have $1610 Colonist America, where we are going to create a culture or a new world founded on people that left oppression, by the way, on the backs of slaves. So these slaves that they had no intention of ever freeing, but then were forced to. Now that brings us to what I mentioned before, the superiority conflict, the manifest destiny. Speak softly, carry a big stick, the white supremacy that we are here. No one else is worth mentioning. Now, when they found out that we might have a little bit of intelligence, that's when they got, ladies and gentlemen, fear breeds anger. The anger that we see on a daily basis with the police force, if you tell a police, first of all, you don't even have to tell a police officer. First of all, it's a mistake to tell a police officer, do you know your job? Are you kidding me? That is, what you're doing is illegal. First of all, you have crossed two no-nos in his mind. The first being to ever question his authority. The second would be to tell him that you have any intelligence, enough intelligence to know that what he's doing is wrong. That fear, that anger brought on by that fear is what we face today. Because when I said that slavery, there was never any end game in slavery. Why? Because we were not considered, and we are still, for the most part, even though, in spite of the fact that we have proven the progress, we have shown the progress that you can make, the intelligence, the physical superiority that we possess. That fact right there is a threat to a people, a certain culture, not everyone, not all of them, a certain culture and a people that does not see us as even human beings, much less equals. So as we progress and elevate, in spite of the hiccups and speed bumps and the sabotage along our paths, the more the diabolical, insidious, underhanded, backstabbing things we are going to have to face on a daily basis. That's why I said a man or a woman who is not capable of being as cold and brutal as his or her enemy is prepared for his own demise. Ladies and gentlemen, we have won, like I said in my previous video, we have won a great battle. But the collateral damage from Donald Trump losing this election has and will create complications that we are going to be forced to face for years to come. And the things that we have made them aware of, the police brutality, which won't stop, the police brutality, getting arrested while calling the police while black, all those obvious things that we have been protesting, although they will continue to manifest themselves and exist, we are going to be faced with more subtle displays of racism, that some will be so insidious and backhanded and backstabbing in nature that some of us will have to step back and say, are you, I think, what did he just say? Or what did he just do? Or what's happening right now? You might not be able to prove it, ladies and gentlemen, but if you have that doubt in your mind that there's something going on, I guarantee you there's something going on. So prepare, ladies and gentlemen, and never bring a knife to a gunfight. Protect your families. Never travel alone. My young brothers and sisters, young men and women, you have a car, you're driving in a car, you have a drive cam, you get pulled over, turn that drive cam around, have your friends start filming and recording. Hands on 10 and 2, don't be ashamed to say yes sir, no sir, officer. And keep that footage safe. Ladies and gentlemen, we are embarking on a new era. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we still need to win the Senate. This voting process is not over. They're hoping that we think it's over, but there's one more step. Ladies and gentlemen, vote in your communities. We have to win the Senate. If we don't win the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, President-elect Joe Biden will be a puppet. A puppet. And the Republicans will be wielding his strings. We have some exciting, informative, and educational broadcasts coming up for you, ladies and gentlemen. But tonight, this one is over. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ralston. I am the Southeast Chapter President of the Unific Brotherhood. We are in active recruitment. We need soldiers. We need teachers. We need educators. We need warriors for our cause in the Unific Brotherhood and the Unific Sisterhood. I will display my email on a future broadcast. And once again, this is a call to action. My name is Ralston.